Thanks so much for choosing Channel 3 this Wednesday morning. I'm Alexandra Montgomery.
Good morning, I'm Dom Amato. Public and private partnerships have helped 214 Vermont towns get hooked up to broadband.
That happens through what's called a Communication Union District, or CUD. Channel 3's Melissa Cooney joins us live with how much it would cost to connect the last line.
Good morning, Dom and Alexandra. That's right. Now, per Vermont statute, CUDs can't use taxpayer money to fund broadband. There is over $124 million has been put into broadband here in the state through the Vermont Community Broadband Board through funding and other grants. Now, they tell me that they're always looking for more funding, federal and grants, but they're confident that Vermonters will be hooked up in the next 5 to 7 years.
Slowly but surely, Vermont is chipping away, getting its residents hooked up to high-speed internet.
It's been 5 years in the making and a lot of volunteer hours.
CV Fiber covers 10 towns. It's one of 6 CUDs in the construction phase, meaning crews are actively on the ground rolling out wires.
COVID really showed how bad it was. I mean, 2 people working with 3 kids or 2 kids. It was a nightmare for most people in this town.
They're starting in Calais. 60% of residents still use DSL, including the town office. Connecting 400 miles in CV Fiber's territory cost them $60 million, coming from ARPA, Infrastructure Act funds, and they plan to seek remaining funds from the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. Part of that funding is from 13 of the 20 towns contributing the ARPA their municipality was specifically granted, money that goes to construction in their town lines. Healy says this doesn't mean contributing towns necessarily go first. They're starting in Calais and working in both directions.
For the towns that don't put up ARPA funds, how does that work?
They'll get the service also. No, we're trying to reach every unserved address in the district.
A financial model shows CV Fiber needs about 40% of people to opt into the service, which will cost customers $79 a month. There's 2 CUD models. For example, CV Fiber owns and operates their network in conjunction with a partner and builds out their own lines. The other model, used by Southern Vermont CUD, for example, partners with private companies like Consolidated Communications to build out already existing fiber. For decades, connecting the so-called last line is a challenge for major providers. It's expensive to connect houses that are so far away in Vermont's rural areas. They get left out, something Vermonters in towns across the state know well.
You get a lot of leaflets at your door from different companies. Fidium, I think, is a big one, but they're not actually offering it in most towns.
Subsequently, some areas are more built out than others.
It's definitely a decision factor when it comes to looking for property.
Progress has been made thanks to the millions of dollars of funding and grants from VCBB. A handful of CUDs already have a small amount of customers live.
It depends on when the CUD was created. CV Fiber and Northeast Kingdom Broadband, and of course EC Fiber were the first 3 CUDs. They are in the construction phase. That doesn't mean some of the newer ones aren't getting there. Maple Broadband has connected some customers out in Addison County.
Rob Fish of the Vermont Community Broadband Board notes they're looking to up to $250 million in more federal funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Fish says connecting broadband is the largest infrastructure project in the history of the state, so it's impossible to know the exact number of how much funding is necessary to finish the project, considering variables like inflation. That's something Governor Phil Scott acknowledged at an early February press conference, too.
I have a feeling that we're going to get to a point where we still aren't to the last mile. Because it's just very expensive, very difficult to do. But at that point, who knows what the technology will bring forth. Maybe they'll perfect more satellite provisions for broadband to connect, but time will tell.
But VCBB says they're overturning every stone to find as much funding as possible.
But we're determined to find and deploy as much grant funding as possible and to find as much low-interest loans rather than go to the bond market.
And you might recall a push earlier in the year to dispute the FCC's broadband map, which the VCBB says inaccurately represented the need for broadband in Vermont, therefore causing Vermonters to miss out on millions of dollars of funding. Well, Rob Fish tells me that they won't actually know how that push has gone until June when there's an official announcement of how much funding the states are being allocated, but they do know that a small amount of these disputes have been accepted. You can tune into our website to see more information about your specific CUD, and you can tune into my special report tomorrow morning following up on this topic on the angle of self-service. For now, we are live in South Burlington. Melissa Cooney, Channel 3 This Morning.